Welcome, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering some questions. Would you tell us shortly about you, yourself, your work, and your organization or company?
Okay. I've been working in the conflict field for about 30 years. For the last 10 years or so, I've had a company called the ARIA Group. I also work at the University of Cincinnati, where I have an institute called the ARIA Institute. So the ARIA Group is more of a consulting company, and the institute is more about research and development. Both obviously focusing on this notion of ARIA. And ARIA is a metaphor that I use which talks about the creative possibilities of conflict. ARIA means song, so the musical metaphors. And then it's also an acronym where we teach people how to surface conflict, to raise the antagonism up so that it can be of interest, not so it can be expressed as much as through violence rather, but so it can be articulated and then decisions can be made about it. That is actually to go underneath it and figure out why people care so much. And that's the resonance phase of our work. That reframes conflict from us versus you to what is it that matters so much to all of us, each of us, and then how do we invent next steps to do something with those sets of needs and values, and then how do we plan action. So that's the process and the company and the work. Yeah.
Is there any particular success case that you would like to illustrate?
Probably the biggest one is about 10 years ago, post-riots in Cincinnati, Ohio, race riots really, between police and community and police. And we worked with the federal judge helping to bring together thousands of participants actually to envision a different future. So in addition to our conflict work about antagonism from the past, we also work with groups and communities about aspirations for the future. How do we create new futures with each other instead of against them? And we did work intensively and helped to create a new agenda that was then implemented in the federal court. And a decade later, we really see the results of that work, which is very satisfying. More recently, just last week, I was in Moldova working with the conflict parties there, and the week before working with youth from around the world. And that one perhaps is the most promising because these youth were so energized and energetic that despite all the despair that this work sometimes leads us to, that one gave me a great sense of possibility and optimism. Just supporting and encouraging them in their pursuits is really rewarding.
The ICP has defined 3 criteria for successful conflict transformation work. It must be comprehensive, it must be compassionate or empathic, and it must be creative. How do you make your work comprehensive?
I think the notion of a systems approach is really important in our work generally. There's an interesting notion right now being developed about attractors at the systems level, that there are dynamics of conflict that get attracted to certain tendencies. And unfortunately that usually means towards regressive or violent tendencies. And our work is to create a counter-attractor, or overcome the vicious cycle and create a virtuous cycle. And my approach is to start from the inside out, that is from the individual and his or her sense of alignment and needs and values. One of my favorite quotes is by Martin Buber, who says, "The problem of conflict is I don't say what I mean nor do what I say." Also, oftentimes because people don't know what they really mean. And conflict is often an opportunity to open that window on oneself. Why does this bother me so much? Why does this bother you so much? So having reached at that level of awareness and clarity, then encountering others becomes much more authentic, and oftentimes then a building block for social change and cooperation. And then again, once individuals meet and work together, then the groups can as well, and then we move up to the systems level where we can really move into social change, impact policy as well as politics, so that people's needs and values are being expressed and fulfilled.
All right. How do you nurture compassion or empathy?
The second phase of my process, resonance, begins, as I said, with a pre-stage of surfacing antagonism. So where are we in opposition? But more importantly, why are we in opposition? What's going on that's so important to us? And our approach is really a narrative approach, where we ask people to identify what really matters to them in ways that they can share through narrative, so that the other side can resonate with. They don't have to agree or disagree, but they can hear in a kind of a vibrational way what deeply matters to each other. And that reframes focus and builds what I call analytic empathy, at least, where I understand where you're coming from, I hear your story, I don't necessarily agree or disagree, it doesn't matter, but I've created that space in my analysis to understand that what you're talking about matters deeply to you. And that creates opportunity for moving into creative next steps, which I guess is your third.
Exactly, that's the third question. How do you manage to further creativity for yourself or for the conflict parties to find creative solutions?
So the first step, again, is to reframe from conflict as opposition to conflict as opportunity. Conflict of antagonism between me and you to conflict as that which makes essential that I articulate what matters to me deeply, my resonance. And from that reframe, the requirement of creativity follows. Einstein has a great quote from Bern, I guess, that the whole problem of our society is creative imagination. And this is a mathematician. And he says mathematical formulas are only a small part of what we need. It's creative imagination. And I think the engine for creative imagination is often conflict, it's tension, it's friction. And what makes music, right? Music is friction over strings. So part of our job then is to create an environment, a setting, a context where people can be their best selves, be imaginative, as they pursue what they've now articulated to be their deep concerns, and to do it in ways that's mutual and co-creative. So I think ultimately that's what it's all about. And naming my company the ARIA Group is metaphorically about that as well. ARIA as a song, conflict as an opportunity for discovery and creativity.
Good, very interesting. Thank you very much, Jay.
You're welcome.